Everybody, welcome to Not Financial Advice Live. As always, I've got my two compatriots, Guy from Coin Bureau and Ben from Into the CRYPTOVERSE. Gentlemen, welcome back to another weekly show.
Thank you, Rob. It's and you're rolling out the new green screen today, the new pool.
Yeah, and you know the problem with these green screens is that they come with variables of heat and cold. Right now, it's very cold in this green screen, so I'm wearing this nice, lovely jacket because it's 34 degrees here in El Paso. What are you gonna do, Ben?
Oof.
So yeah, Ben, how's things going, buddy?
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. I have my green screen up behind me as well.
That is the lamest green screen I've ever seen, but it never changes. So it looks
I don't know,
good.
man. I mean, you might say that, but there's a lot of people that talk about that chair and those three doors quite frequently in the comment section. So maybe I've figured out the algorithm.
Exactly.
That chair has its own Instagram account, I think. I'm pretty sure I saw that.
If that chair moves and Ben gets a haircut, that means that the comments go crazy.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, this is Ben and his site in the CRYPTOVERSE, fantastic. And also you got Guy from Coin Bureau and Coin Bureau Clips. Definitely check them out. So gents, we got some interesting things to talk about. And the first thing is this. This is the question that we came up with was right now, and there's some very uncertain times. This is why I'm glad you guys are here. It seems that the traditional and crypto markets are doing pretty well so far this year. So the question I have is, since Q1 did so well, what's Q2 going to look like? And we can just see that, you know, the S&P 500 over the last day, not too bad. 5 days, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year. Okay, you got me on that one, -8. But over 5 years, look, things are up for S&P 500, even though we've had talk about a depression coming or a major recession or even a mild recession. Also, we take a look at NASDAQ, last 5 days, not too good. 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 5 year. And of course, our market, not too bad. Actually, doing a little refresh here. Lately, not too bad, but last 24 hours, a little bit of a dip. What you going to do? But the thing is, and this is, I always steal from Ben's website, link in the description, 10% off for the first month. The first 3 months, we've had a pretty miraculous run here for Bitcoin. You know, up 40%, February still positive, March. The last time I did the first 3 months was 2021. And then the last time before that was 2013. And what those have in common? Well, pretty big bull runs. So then the question is, where are we? So Guy, I want to start with you. Just where do you think we are right now and where are we going? You can do it over a host of different things and call into account macro. I want to see where we're going, so I know exactly where to allocate all my funds for investment advice. No, I'm just kidding. This is not financial advice.
Good to clear that up at the start. Yeah, well, I mean, first off, I think no one was kind of more surprised than me with the way Q1 has gone, especially for crypto, given all the kind of things that the industry's been dealing with, that the industry is still dealing with. So that caught me by surprise, I must say. So where do we go from here? I mean, I guess the things I'm looking at first and foremost is what happens next month with the Fed. Do we get that other rate hike to take us, you know, above to take the terminal rate above 5%? That I imagine that is probably what we're going to end up with. Obviously, a good chance maybe of a pause at the next meeting and then another rate hike a little further down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess we have to watch those inflation figures. I don't think there's any indication from what I've seen and read that the Fed is planning to take rates much higher than this one other 25 basis point hike. So I guess the rest of the year we're going to be stuck with this terminal rate around 5%, just over, and we're going to have to see where those inflation figures go. Are those higher rates going to do the job, and how long is the Fed going to be able to keep us there? So,
yeah,
I mean, I want to say, I don't know. I was so kind of, like I say, I was so kind of caught out by Q1. I kind of think, well, maybe I should be, maybe I should go the opposite way to what I think, But I mean, I think first of all, in terms of crypto, I think April is going to be pretty wild. I mean, the 12th of April in particular, we've got the CPI data. As Ben, I think, pointed out in a recent tweet, the most important bit of the most important CPI since the last CPI, or was it the most important Fed meeting since the last Fed meeting?
Yeah,
I forget.
Fed meeting.
So we've got the CPI. We've also got the Fed minutes, which I think is going to be very instructive. Obviously, the Fed minutes, in the wake of the banking crisis, and we've also got Ethereum's this Shapiro upgrade. So unstaking finally going to be possible. That's going to be big. So I expect some volatility around then, and then there's obviously this banking crisis as well. Now this, seems to be under control at the moment. That's, I say seems, kind of underlined, as it were. But obviously that has been that's been the kind of big surprise, which has been great for crypto, great for Bitcoin in particular. But I think that's really helped sort of carry the crypto market over the last month or so as well. But of course, we do have, it seems to be in this kind of state of sort of one crisis after another that we seem to be in. I guess the next thing to look out for is commercial real estate. Something that a lot of people are now talking about. Something that we're kind of keeping a big lookout for as well. So, yeah, where do we go from here? I mean, my instinct tells me that Q2 is going to be pretty volatile across all markets. I think my instinct says that it's probably going to be more to the downside than to the upside. But then when we come to talking about crypto, just who knows? There are a few headwinds for crypto. One thing that I'm kind of particularly sort of keeping an eye on is what happens over in Europe and the UK. The UK recently, there's been a few bits of news and rumblings out there that maybe this kind of whole crypto hub, maybe these ambitions aren't quite what they seem. And also we've got EU politicians are going to be debating this markets in crypto assets bill a little later this month as well. And that's something I'm keeping a very close eye on, because I think I've talked about this a few times before, and the latest draft was very positive. So there is this good chance that the EU is kind of setting itself up as a more crypto-friendly place than the United States. However, yeah, I mean that's what we're hoping. But I am worried that because I think US influence is pretty pervasive. And so I'm going to be watching that closely, because I think there's a good chance we could see them rowing back a bit on those regulations if there has been a lot of pressure from regulators in the United States. And of course, we've got things like Binance getting chased as well. That seems to be kind of all over the place. However, at the same time, Bitcoin's correlation with stocks is at its lowest level since 2021. I think there is still, I think the correlation between crypto and tech stocks is still, relatively close. But it just goes to show, I think, really, we could see Bitcoin and crypto go in either direction, really. So all I can say with much certainty is that it's going to be pretty volatile.
Oh man, Guy, that was a heck of a great answer to put it all into perspective. I was trying to sneak in some. There was this. First of all, so like when you talk about it, banks. So it looks like to me it's going to be banks. It's going to be regulation. It's going to be the correlation, and it's going to come down to the macro effects of the Fed here in America. And I can see that happening too. It's just there's so much out there. So a real quick follow-up question would be this. So with all this turbulence, what is your kind of plan to do with the portfolio that you have personally? Is it just to stay the course, Or do you think that there's going to be more, like, just if you had to do it, would you put any more funds in, or would you say, you know what, I'm just going to sit and wait for some relevance?
I'm happy to sit this. I'm happy to sit this out, and we can. I think we're going to talk about altcoins in particular a little later on, aren't we?
Yeah.
I'm happy to sit on my hands at this point and just kind of watch it all unfold. I'm pretty happy with the allocations that I've got. And because because this last quarter has been so surprising, I'm just happy to kind of sit back and kind of consider the lessons of the last 3 months, really. I don't think for me certainly it's not a market I'm particularly looking to dip my toes into at this point. I'd rather just kind of sit back and watch the carnage unfold, really. So yeah, I think that's going to give me the best possible night's sleep, I think.
Yeah. To quote Mark Twain, whenever you find yourself on the side of majority, it's time to pause and reflect. So it's not a bad idea just to sit back on the sidelines and take it into full effect. Now, to talk about it, just to kind of bring things forward, like the last 3 months, there was this is what I was trying to find as you were talking, sorry. It was Professor Steve Hanke, and he was on Dave Lynn's channel, and he's a big, not an advocate, we will say, of Bitcoin. And he just talks about how, Bitcoin's going down, it's gonna be awful. And I just said, hey, the first quarter of 2023 performance, if you look at it, Bitcoin's doing pretty good. And just like we talked about, we're uncorrelated against NASDAQ, CSE 40, Korea, the DAX, Europe, gold, and S&P 500. So I got to agree with you somewhere there and just say, yeah, I think it's going to be turbulent, but we're doing good so far. Ben, this will come to you, the same exact question. And actually, you had a great interview with David Lynn. And what I liked about this one was that we talked about this before. David has had a host of people, Steve Hanke being one of them, on his show, and he kind of summarizes everything that's going on in the macro effect. So it was a brilliant move to have this guy on, just give you all the great information. But how do you see things after talking to David and your own reflections of where we're going to go in Q2?
Yeah, I thought David was a great guest because, as I was telling you guys earlier, like he basically interviews everyone with every single opinion you can imagine, whether it's like, a massive bull run or the worst recession or depression in 100 years, right? So he's got a pretty good gauge on all the extreme views, and I thought, hey, maybe he can synthesize things in a way that is more realistic. As far as my thoughts for 2023 are we all get sufficiently wrecked, right? We wreck the bears
Sure.
half the year, we wreck the bulls half the year. This is what we saw in 2019 and 2015 as well. I don't really see any reason why this time's going to be different. And we just had 3 months of green. So, could we, if you look at the last 2 years, actually the turning point was in April, I believe. The monthly returns that you had on the screen earlier, the last 2 years, in fact, April, May, and June were red in the last couple of years.
No, that's true.
You should note that in 2019, though, the rally did extend until June. So I'm not saying it necessarily has to end here, but April is, there's a lot of flows in April, I think, from retail investors. And then as you get out into the summer, right, there's this like sell in May and go away idea, which can often lead to sort of the summer lull. We've talked about, right, like in 2021, we had the summer lull where we just sort of went down into the summer, and then we basically were just in a somewhat of a just this summer lull where it was kind of boring for 3 months and interest really waned, and then it didn't really pick back up until closer to the end of the year. So I would say it's hard to know if it's going to happen in Q2 or not, but I would say we likely will spend half the year with approximately or getting some red months. So I think we're probably going to get some in the second quarter. One thing that I think is interesting, and it's surely nothing you can take to the bank, but the lowest price that Bitcoin was at in Q1 was on January 1st, right? The lowest price was on January 1st. And so far in Q2, the highest price was on April 1st, at least so far. So we'll see if we can take out that high. I believe that high is just below 29K I think.
Yeah.
So far, we've been unable to take it out. So I'm kind of interested in that. I mean, if we can take that out, then perhaps we can extend the rally a bit further, like 2019. But that is something to think about. And then also, I was looking at, if you look at the rally that Bitcoin had in 2022, that was in March. It also, that rally also kind of died down around the March timeframe, March and April timeframe back then. I think sort of the turning point was in early April. And also this turning point in 2015 was in March and April. And then furthermore, after Bitcoin hit that local high back in March of 2022, it was about 5 or 6 days that Ethereum hit its local high, which for Ethereum, that would have been yesterday if it's about 6 days after Bitcoin hit its own local high. So I know these things are kind of silly because we could easily take those highs out if the stock market pushes higher, but I do think we likely will get some, at least 1 or 2 red months in the second quarter of the year, and probably some more in the third quarter as well. I know that a lot of people are really optimistic about, all-time highs and everything, but we made the same mistakes in 2019, when it went to 14K. We made the same mistake in 2015.
Yeah.
So I will continue to sit on the idea that this year is the year to get both bulls and bears sufficiently wrecked, and only once everyone's wrecked, can we actually have another true bull market to take us to new all-time highs.
Yeah, it all makes sense, doesn't it? Like when we talk about these things, especially when we say, well, they're going to get wrecked and it's going to happen, or it might happen, who knows? And it's one of those things where I keep in my back of my head, I'm always thinking to myself, sell in May and go away, sell in May, because like we all differ in our investment strategies, right? I am under the realization that I'm not smart enough to figure it all out, so I just DCA and then just kind of put myself in that position. And it's one of those things where I think to myself, maybe I should sell. And it's really like a real thing in back, like if I sell, and we're talking about it, especially Ben, I hear your voice sometimes, take a cold shower, do these things. And then I'm like, if I can not get wrecked, this will be great. But then I think to myself, you're going to mess it up. So I think like for me personally, I just think, okay, if I do that, it's just a funny thing. As soon as I sell, everything goes up to the moon. So I'm just kind of just going to sit here and wait. But it would make sense, especially with this a pending upcoming recession, which I guess would lead me to my next question here, which is this. As more countries swap the dollar, and we've seen a lot of them, with China and Russia, the Asian countries and Iran and Iraq, as they're kind of swapping the dollar for their native currency for commerce and the DXY declining, is this good for Bitcoin and gold? Or is this good for the rise of CBDCs? And what I'm talking about is, if we take a look at the Dixie, over the last day, not too bad, right? But over 5 days, a little bit of a decline. 1 month, it's kind of going in that direction. 3 months, 6 months, and so on. And you can just see that it's getting a little bit weak. And Ben, I will say this. I know on your channels where I learned, as the Dixie goes down, it seems like Bitcoin goes up in that valuation. Gold is 2% below its record high settlement. So I think we can't discount that. I mean, look, it's almost at, where are we at? 1800. Now we're over at 1978. Over here, 2025. So, I mean, is this where we're going to go, or you see more of the same? And Ben, I'll start with you because I want to talk about CBDCs with Guy in his video in a little bit.
Yeah, the dollar, the Dixie, there's always a lot of sensationalist headlines when it rallies. Like, if you think back to September, October, there's a lot of headlines, and it was sort of the reverse. Now, obviously, it's going in the other direction. But I will say, I don't really think the U.S. dollar is going anywhere. I think it will stay the world reserve currency for a long time. And even if it is destined to not be, that process typically takes decades to play out, right? So if it is in that process, I don't think we would really fully see that take place for another 20 or 30 years. You don't just blink and then the world just collectively no longer cares about US dollars. So I will say that I do think the headlines tend to get to be the most extreme around the tops and the bottoms on the dollar. So I could see the dollar getting some type of a bounce, relatively soon. I mean, in the short term, it's obviously been pretty weak. And I think right now it's sort of right around its prior low, I think, back in, a couple months ago, which is also corresponding to the euro potentially at a double top on the US dollar. But yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Like if the dollar pushes lower, historically, it's a good thing for Bitcoin. If you look back throughout the context of history, that's not always the case, at least for risk assets in general. Now, since Bitcoin's been around, when the dollar goes up, it's usually not good for Bitcoin. And when the dollar goes down, it's usually great for Bitcoin. If you look back at prior recessions and the US dollar, there were times where the dollar goes down and so too does the stock market. So there are cases where you can see both go down at the same time. So I know at least for people who've been in crypto, like we've never really experienced that. But it is something that can happen once in a while, and some of these more traditional trends can break. But yeah, I mean, normally when the dollar goes down, obviously it's been good for Bitcoin. It's been good for Bitcoin over the last several months. Do I think that? So yeah, I mean, normally if it declines, it is good for Bitcoin. With regards to gold, yeah, so I am actually pretty bullish on gold. We actually talked about gold last week as well, and I think a few months ago too. Yeah. And my general thought, right, is like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I kind of see it the same way, right? Like I think that gold and silver are likely going to do well over the next 5 years. Now, I mean, in the short term, they've moved up quite a bit, so. Of course, they could come back down and retest the breakout point. Like silver could go back down, but I do think they are pretty bullish. In fact, gold, if you look at prior recessions, it tends to give positive returns. Whereas you can't really say the same for most risk assets. And we're still in the phase of just figuring out what Bitcoin is. We all hope that it performs a certain way, but with gold. I think it has proven itself to do well during periods of relatively flat stock market returns. If you know that chart you were showing earlier for the S&P 500, has basically been going flat for a while. I mean, all things considered, there's been a tug of war between the bulls and the bears since like June of 2022 on the S&P. It hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, look at what has happened since June. If you look at just the last year, it's basically just been between 3,500 and 4,200 for the last year. And yeah, now if you look at the 2000s and you look at the 1970s, we had periods of relatively flat stock market returns during those decades. And during those decades, gold went on absolutely massive bull runs, much more than most crypto investors have ever seen. Right. And in the 70s, it was also during a period of high inflation, which I think kept stock market returns fairly tempered, which I think is why Powell wants to get inflation back down, is because he knows the consequences of not doing so. You see no growth for potentially a decade. So why not just rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with? And then in the 2000s, we had relatively stagnant growth. And again, gold did really well there too. So I think gold is a great hedge in a portfolio to have, especially during sort of the economic uncertain times that we're in today, right? I mean, there seems to be a whole lot. I tweeted the other day. I took a screenshot of it because on the how Twitter shows you like what's trending, like literally alt season and recession were both trending, and I was just like, these are wild times that we're living in. So yeah, I think gold is likely going to do well for the next several years. I think that Bitcoin will do well as well, but I think that Bitcoin will have another scare. And I've said that many times before its next bull market to all-time highs. I don't think it's going to go to all-time highs without having one more scare. And we've always had one. Again, 2015, 2019, or 2020, we had the same thing happen. And also note too that 2020 corresponded to a recession, right? I mean, it was a short recession, but it still technically was a recession, and we got a glimpse, albeit very brief as to how Bitcoin performed, and it wasn't great, not in the short term anyways. What happened after it, right? It exploded because we went back to QE. So I think we need to get back to that point for crypto to have a realistic chance to go to new all-time highs. But gold, I think is going to hold up relatively well for the next, like, I would say 4 to 5 years. I could also see silver outperforming gold. If you look at the gold silver ratio, so like the ratio of gold to silver, the prices, it seems to be pretty elevated. So if you like think of gold silver as like an oscillator, like if you think about like Ethereum Bitcoin and a lot of the altcoins with respect to Bitcoin, they're oscillators or they just lose value. The gold silver ratio, it looks more like an oscillator, and it's pretty high on the gold side right now. So I think over the next 5 years, we'll actually see silver go through a period where it significantly outperforms gold.
Excellent. That was a good one. That was a lot to consider. Guy, same thing for you. So if we're talking about all things we just said, the Dixie and Bitcoin Gold, is everything that's happening, is this good for Bitcoin? And then to harp on and to get to the crux of your video, this one was interesting. I linked this in the description. It's the CBDC report. And I found this fascinating because with all the turmoil and all the people moving from the US dollar to different currencies, I thought there would be a little bit more of a higher demand for CBDCs as they roll these out. But this report, I thought was great. This is from the government, that CBDCs could actually destabilize banks, and they're looking to not get into CBDCs. So again, same question, but then also can you touch on the CBDC effect?
Sure. Yeah, it's a fascinating narrative at the moment. I don't know whether I'm actually researching a video on the decline of the dollar as we speak, but so maybe that's kind of informed the fact that I just seem to be seeing stuff about it everywhere. But it really seems to be a talking point at the moment, this idea that that the dollar is kind of in terminal decline, and you can get both sides of the argument. Really, there are some people who seem to believe that its days are numbered, and before too long we'll have something else, although it's never quite clear what that something else will be. So it is, it's a very interesting narrative to watch play out. But I'm 100% with Ben on this. Any decline in the dollar, and I think there's no doubt that it is declining. In terms of influence and in terms of acceptance. But any decline will play out over decades. You don't displace something like the dollar overnight. Of course, I mean, what usually happens, or certainly what happened in the case of the last reserve currency, the pound, I mean, that took a war. I mean, that took really kind of 2 world wars to really do the trick for the pound. But there is always the idea that some massive great conflict could throw the dollar off. But let's hope we don't go there. So yes, I mean, everything we're seeing now, 100% is excellent news for Bitcoin, and it ties into this narrative we're seeing with the banking crisis as well. People are realizing that, okay, you take your reserve currency. Do you want to be in hock to the US government, or do you want to be in hock to the Chinese government, or to any other government? And I think more and more people, the answer to that question is, well, I don't want to. I want to be in control of my own money. I don't want to have a government that I didn't vote for. Dictating what happens with the money in my pocket, or either directly or indirectly. So I think as more and more people wake up to what Bitcoin is, as more and more people take the orange pill, then long term this decline of the dollar narrative is going to be excellent for Bitcoin, and could be a huge driver of that next all-time high whenever we see it. So people want something that they can hold as more people understand exactly what financial freedom is. This is something that I bang on about all the time. People often assume that financial freedom just means having enough money to, not work or do whatever you want. Really, what financial freedom means is having the freedom to spend that money how you want, where you want, on what you want. So I think, and Bitcoin offers that. Bitcoin is one of the few things that offers that. It can't be censored. It can't be stopped. and it can't be, it can't be clawed back, as it were. So I think more and more people will wake up to that. That will drive Bitcoin's price action in the long term, and that will certainly, I think, drive it to to all-time highs in the future. But
Sure.
going back to this idea of financial freedom, yeah, this is obviously where CBDCs come in, and this is why this is why one of the reasons why I'm so opposed to them. This idea, all the literature we're seeing about CBDCs at the moment, everything we're hearing about them is centralized control and control with a capital C. There's going to be so much. There's going to be so much that the central banks issuing them are able to do, and hence the governments that control those central banks. And that is not financial freedom. That is quite the opposite. So yeah, it's interesting to think about where, how this decline of the dollar kind of feeds into the CBDC narrative. Because I guess you could argue that, again, not only are individuals saying, well, I don't want to hold a currency that's controlled by a foreign government.
Sure.
I think more and more actual governments are going to be saying to themselves, well, we don't want our currency dictated by the actions of another state, whether they're an ally or an enemy of ours or somewhere in the middle. And that's what CBDCs offer in a way. They offer much more control over the currency, much more control over the people spending it. And again, as we get this kind of polarization, as the world kind of shifts into, I guess, a Chinese sphere of influence and a US sphere of influence, I mean, that's the way that I see it going. Then, these countries kind of either in the middle or in either of those spheres, I think CBDCs are going to become more attractive, if they offer that sort of control. That said, yes, you're right. This recent report from the US government did kind of advocate putting the brakes on a little bit. So yeah, we're still very much in uncharted territory with them, but that's why we're seeing all these pilots. So many of the CBDCs that are in the works at the moment, they're already out there, a lot of them. Places like India has a digital rupee pilot going on. China's digital yuan pilot has been going on for a while now, and I think they're going to continue for a while, which is why I don't necessarily think we're going to see a fully fledged CBDC rolled out. I think everyone's watching places like Nigeria, for instance, and that CBDC, the e-Naira, has not been a big success. So and has actually caused more financial destabilization. So yeah, there's I think these pilots are going to be fascinating and kind of scary to watch.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on this one. And I will say, I took a lot of heat for this because we're talking about CBDCs in a couple of videos previously. And I said, look, CBDCs are inevitable. It's just how it's going to happen. We're going to go to that way. And I said, and then of course, when I said that, people were like, well, Rob is obviously a government shill. I'm like, no, you're misinterpreting this. So when I say that CBDCs are inevitable, they are, just like a lot of things that are inevitable. But as things move forward, absolute power corrupts absolutely. If the governments can use these things and they can shut off things, what do you think is going to happen when all these countries that sign up to use the yuan are now on the digital yuan, and now they say, we're going to shut things down? They're like, I don't like that. I don't like what's going on. So maybe I should go for another type of currency that maybe be able to decentralize. Now it's a pie in the sky thinking, but I could see that. And this video that you put out, again, the link in the description to watch it, was interesting to note that the governments are like, hey, if we use this will crash the banking system, which will be a problem. So we probably shouldn't do it. And I thought to myself, how interesting is that? We just saw that when the banks start to collapse, what is that good for? People start to think to themselves, wait, this is not the system that I grew up. I should actually do something a little bit different. Maybe I should get out. And that's when I think we're going to get more of those text messages from our family and friends. We're like, hey, what's up with this Bitcoin thing? Because I don't trust what's going on. That's just how I see things. All right. So excellent answers, a lot to digest there. Now let's just get into a little, we talked pretty harsh. Pretty hard on a lot of the macro effects, the Q2 recessions, things like that. Let's just lighten it up a little bit. When are you going to buy some alts? Come on. This is the thing that everybody wants to know. I'm already buying alts, whether that be good or bad, I'm still doing it. But the question is when are you going to buy alts? Guy, Ben, let me know. So Guy, I'll start with you since we just let off there.
Sure. Oh gosh, Rob, it's a tricky question. I mean, I suppose you could argue that. I mean, first up, it's fascinating what Ben said about those search trends, isn't it? You've got people searching for alt season on the one hand and recession on the other, and absolutely shows you just where we are at the moment. I personally believe alt season is a very, very long way away, as in not this year, which means I'm not in any hurry to buy any alts at all, especially not large cap ones that may have seen the majority of their growth. That said, you can counter that and say, well, the time to buy is you don't buy just before alt season, don't you? But by that point, prices are already going up. You want to buy when kind of no one's interested, when no one's really doing anything, and that's when you're more likely to get these assets at a good price. So I don't know. I just feel I want to see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel for crypto from a regulatory point of view. I want to have a sense that the industry has kind of worked out some of these issues with banking, for example. Now, I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know what's going to happen, particularly in the US and, of course, elsewhere over the next few months. But until I'm kind of more confident, for instance, I was talking about the EU just earlier on. They're debating that markets in crypto assets bill later this month. Now, if that bill were to get waved through in its current form and to get voted into law in the EU, then that would set alarm bells ringing in my head in a good way, I should say, because that would say to me, it's like, okay, the US doesn't like crypto. But there are other big jurisdictions out there that are, crucially allies of the US that do like crypto, or at the very least want to encourage it, want to encourage innovation, want to encourage growth. Now, if I was to see something like that happen, then that could be my trigger for buying alts, regardless of what kind of state the market is in then. So I just want to feel more positive about the direction that the market is going in the kind of short to medium term than I do now. Long term, I'm extremely bullish, but I don't know. I would feel better. It goes back to that good night's sleep. I would have a better night's sleep if I see some more positive news for crypto.
Fair enough answer. Conservatism actually sometimes wins out. Ben, what do you got? When are you going to buy some alts? Everyone wants to know when Ben's going to buy alts, because I got to tell you, if Ben buys alts, I think that's the start of when we really kick off a massive bull run. Ben, what do you think?
Can I change my answer, Rob, and just say I'm buying alts when Ben's buying alts?
There we go. I
should have just said that and saved everyone that long explanation.
So the reality is, whenever I buy alts, it'll probably be the local top for the altcoin market.
That's also true. Yeah, okay, got a point.
Yeah, but I'll say the same thing I've always said, right? I mean, and this is where I get in trouble is every few months the alt market has a bounce off of a new low, and everyone's like, oh well, my altcoin's up 50% or 70% or whatever. But again, the reality is I've been saying the altcoin market is too risky for 15 months now, and everyone go out there and cherry pick whatever recent local low they want to. But the reality is that most of them have been in macro downtrends against Bitcoin for almost 2 years. Okay, that's the reality. Now, some of them have done well, and I will always say that there are going to be some that can do well. Even Ethereum's Bitcoin valuation has been putting in lower highs, not only for the last year, but since 2017. And this is one of those realities that I think a lot of people just don't want to accept. But I'm gonna say how it is, right? Look at the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, and if you have a strong stomach, look at it on a linear scale, and you tell me if it's not been putting in lower highs since 2017, and it has been. Now it's also been putting in higher lows, and I will contend that I don't really fully know what's going to happen in 3 years. But I still think that in the short term, a lot of these altcoins are just bleeding on their Bitcoin pairs. Go take a look at Solana Bitcoin. It's down like 80% against, 80%. Cardano Bitcoin, 70, 80% down. Avalanche Bitcoin, Polkadot Bitcoin. The list goes on, right? Most of them are just down 70 to 80% on their Bitcoin pairs. And Bitcoin also went down a lot, right? So the whole point, and I've said this for a long time, is it's okay, in my opinion, right? DCAing into Bitcoin throughout a bear market and a recovery year tends to work out quite well. And I've said this many times. Rob, you asked me the end of last year if I'm buying anything. What did I say? I said the only thing I'm buying is Bitcoin, because everything else is likely going to bleed against Bitcoin. And I still think that, because guess what? If Bitcoin comes back down at some point this year, which I think it will, the altcoin market at that point is likely just going to get wrecked again, because a lot of them have actually lost their support levels on their Bitcoin valuation. So if you look at like ADA Bitcoin, the support that it held in June and in like September or whatever, the support level that it held around 1,1600 Satoshis, it's gone, right? And now ADA Bitcoin has broken that support level. So what happens when Bitcoin USD comes down? It has nowhere to hide, right? It just keeps going down. And in the last cycle, it went to 400 Satoshis before it had bottomed. 400. So, I know a lot of people, want just like the peer pressure game, right? Like, when's Ben going to do it, right? Everyone's doing it. You love it. You're going to love it. Just do it. You love it. But the reality is, I've experienced several of these market cycles with crypto. And one of the things that is true time and time again is that Bitcoin recovers eventually, and that a lot of altcoins don't. That's the reality. And the other reality is that 99.9% of altcoins are just scams. Most of them are just forked code from other altcoins. That's all they are, and you can go change a couple lines of code and put up a WordPress site and call it the next best thing, but it doesn't mean it's not a scam. So I would say that most people are going to be much better off with Bitcoin. Right, my crypto portfolio is almost entirely just Bitcoin right now, right? I mean that's just what it is. I mean, I also have a large cash position because I think it's going to be important to have that in a potential recession. But I don't see the bull case for the altcoin market. And here's the other side: if Bitcoin breaks out and goes up, what happens to the altcoin market? Okay, maybe they get dragged up, kicking and screaming on their USD pairs, but Bitcoin still likely outperforms them. Look what happened in Q1. Bitcoin went up, 70%, 80%. And the dominance of Bitcoin went from like 39% or 40% all the way up to 47 to 48%. So, I mean, what happens if Bitcoin continues this rally? The altcoin market's still just going to get left behind. So the point is, if you're not really sure about the altcoin market, let's say you have an altcoin that you like. The point is that being in Bitcoin now will likely allow you to buy that altcoin later at a lower Satoshi value than it is today. Okay. So, and then again, the biggest counterpoint to, so some people say, well, what if the bottom is in, right? What if the entire market is bottomed? That's always a possibility, right? We said that back in the summer that we'll likely have another low. And the way we can get another low after that is if we get a recession, right? So, I mean, if we get a recession later this year. But here's the thing too. In 2018, Bitcoin bottomed, right? And it did not put in a lower low. Guess what did put in a lower low? Cardano in 2020. Guess what else put in a lower low? XRP put in a lower low in 2019 and 2020. Dogecoin put in a lower low in, I believe, 2019 and 2020. A lot of the altcoin market just simply puts in lower lows. So even if your point is, well, Bitcoin's bottomed, which again, it could have, but even if that's your point, it doesn't mean that the altcoin market has. And we've seen that play out time and time again. Furthermore, the other thing that we've seen happen plenty of times is that Bitcoin normally hits an all-time high before a majority of the altcoin market does. Okay, no one ever believes it, but look what happened last time. Bitcoin, and you can stop me if I'm going too long, but
no, this is great.
In 2020, I said back then Bitcoin will hit a new all-time high before Ethereum. A lot of people didn't believe it, and guess what? Bitcoin hit a new all-time high. Ethereum was at like $700 when Bitcoin hit its new all-time high. People just forget that. Cardano had not broken out until after. So a lot of these altcoins are just likely not hitting all-time highs ever. And the ones that do probably won't do so until after Bitcoin hits an all-time high. And so a lot of times the time to buy altcoins is after like these parabolic rallies that Bitcoin has to new highs. And then you convert to the altcoins, because then the altcoin market against Bitcoin goes up. Now, I will say that a lot of altcoins will probably bottom against Bitcoin before Bitcoin's parabolic rally. I think they'll probably go up and then come back down. But if to just get back to your question, right? When's the time to buy altcoins? Last year in 2022, what I said was the earliest is December of 2022, like the absolute earliest that people should even consider them. But considering that the dominance is still low for Bitcoin, I still think that you're better off. I mean, Bitcoin's a better play. I just think Bitcoin's a better play. So, for every dollar, you have to think about opportunity cost. For every dollar you put in the cryptoverse, if you put it into Bitcoin, we can be pretty confident, although not 100% confident, but we can be pretty confident that Bitcoin will eventually recover, to its all-time highs. At least that's why we're here. And if you don't believe that, I don't really know why you're watching this show, right? But we can be pretty confident that eventually Bitcoin will recover to new all-time highs. You can't say the same thing about a majority of the altcoin market. And when people point to the altcoins and say, well, look how much this one went up, that's survivorship bias. Think about all the coins from 2013 that did not rally in 2017. Think about all the coins from 2017 that did not rally in 2021. There's going to be a lot of coins in 2025 that rally that don't rally that rallied in 2021. So everyone's going to be sitting there waiting for these alts to hit new all-time highs, but the new market participants aren't going to care about them. They're going to be the boomer coins, the coins from a past cycle, a relic from a prior cycle, and no one's going to care about them anymore because there's going to be a new shiny object to chase after. So, yeah, I think that until Bitcoin has really regained its dominance, and I'm talking about I think at least over 50%, right? But 55, 60%. Once you get to those levels, I think that you can start to make the case that some altcoins are worth the potential opportunity cost, right? Like you can then make the case that, all right, well, yeah, the altcoin might not survive, but there's also this idea that if it does survive, we know that the altcoin market can give outsized gains in the market than Bitcoin. But you don't get those outsized gains by buying every bear market rally in the altcoin market every step of the way down, right? You conserve the Satoshi value of your portfolio by mostly being in Bitcoin, and then eventually the altcoin market makes sense. But it only makes sense, in my view, after the dominance is much higher and after all these alt Bitcoin pairs have truly become just a shell of their former selves. By the way, for people that say like, oh, well, these altcoins are down 80%, 90%. So what? Doesn't mean they can't go down 95, 98% on their Bitcoin pairs. We saw many altcoins go down 95, 98% on their Bitcoin pairs. And by the way, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation in last cycle, it did not bottom in 2018. Cardano Bitcoin did not bottom in 2018. When did they bottom? They bottomed in Q3 of 2019. So to sort of answer your question, I think the time to buy altcoins, is probably, again, we'll see what happens, right? But
yeah,
probably Q3 or Q4 this year.
Ben, how many times have you answered that question on your channel and on Twitter? How many times have you answered that question? Like, Ben,
has it been
altcoin.
wrong? I mean, most of these alts just keep going down against Bitcoin, as far as I can tell.
So look, and here's the thing. Excellent answer. I mean, because I know Ben has answered this a plethora of times. So it's always interesting when I get him riled up and I can talk about the altcoins. This is great. But, there's a point to be made. There's a really good point to be made. And I urge everybody to go to coinmarketcap.com/historical. And you can take a look at all the different altcoins that were ever going to be the next shiny thing, awesome object, and just see how the top 10, 20, 50 do not exist anymore. And that is just the truth. However, and Ben, you hit on the head, there's some outsized gains, but which ones are going to make it? And that's the thing about Not Financial Advice, the show. We can't give you financial advice, but we can show you some history. And one of that history would be Cardano. In January 1st, 2018, it was It wasn't worth anything after hitting $1, I think, in 2017. But if you invested back then and then got into it, it would have been a 35x from the peak to the high. If you do that, and if you just would have waited, which would have been a much better play in this time frame. And I know history it's not perfect, but it does rhyme, all that good stuff. But if you would have waited until 2019, which is the reset year, and gone to the peak, it would have been a 39x. All you had to do was just not do anything, and we had 39x. In 2020, a 26x, and if you would have invested during the bull run, only a 3x. But to get into your point, not everything goes back. And that's what I always talk about on my channel, a dash of salt. Remember Dash? I don't know. If you own Dash, congratulations. I mean, I'm not going to bash it too hard here. But if you would have held it since 2018 to the tip, it's a whopping 3x. Watch out. Did we get out of bed for that? I don't know. And then also salt, which is going to be the next shiny thing, which is going to be so awesome and great for loans and things like that. It peaked at 1722 and flatlined after that. So just be careful out there when you start to invest in these alts, because yes, there are outside gains, and yes, they can be awesome. But the thing is, are they everything that they could be? I don't know. And that's why I can't tell you what to do. But I invest into alts, and I'm still buying alts because I'm just trying to get the piece. But the majority is Bitcoin, Ethereum, just to make it very clear.
Well,
but
Rob,
there is some degenerate stuff.
The other thing too is, I know everyone calls me a Bitcoin maxi because I've just keep saying no altcoins for the last 15, 16 months. I would point them to my 2019 videos when I said Cardano is a great buy at 2 cents. Where were they then? Where the first video on my channel?
Where were you?
Yeah, where were they then? The first video on my channel was the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation was at 0.02. And it's literally the title of the video is like Ethereum Bitcoin is severely undervalued. That video has less than 10,000 views. Where were they then? That's more sort of my response to the critics to say I'm a Bitcoin maxi. Look, there's a time to put on your maxi hat and there's a time not to. And when you go through a bear market and even in the recovery year, the altcoin market, I'm not saying they can't go up sometimes, but it's a difficult battle to face, and they're likely going to continue to put in new lows. That's the reality. We've seen it happen time and time again. So yeah, my response is go look at my 2019 videos and ask yourself, where were they then?
Where were you then? And just to be fair, in 2022, I was micro DCing. Everything bled against Bitcoin, and it just kind of happened like that. And I just started over to full DCA just a couple of months ago, and that's it. So I think if I would have just sat out, and of course Ben's in the back, take a shower, cold shower. If I would have sat out, I would have been doing a lot better. Anyhow, let's get off this subject and just wrap this up. And everybody, if you want to have your questions answered, put your questions in the chat right now. But here's the question. If you have anyone on your show, and I want to make this person like a reality, not someone who has passed away or a figurative like Satoshi Nakamoto. If you have anybody on your show, who would it be and why? And they have to be alive and accessible. Guy, I'll start with you.
Interesting. I'm wondering what accessible means, but maybe you can. Okay, maybe you can
accessible.
Tell me.
Oh, I mean like he could be alive like Satoshi Nakamoto, but I don't really know where he's at. So you could actually get a hold of him and come on the show.
Yeah. I would like to talk to. Do you know what? I'd like to talk to Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister. He's a little bit wooden. You occasionally think, gosh, this person is doing a remarkably lifelike imitation of a human being. But he is, he's an interesting figure in that he's kind of a tech bro at heart, but former chancellor, so he knows what he's talking about, when it comes to economics. And I would just like to sit down with him and say, look, Rishi, what's going on with this whole UK as a crypto hub, as a digital assets, as a digital assets hub? What's going on? Why are we not seeing, why are you not seeing through on this? Why are you not sort of taking this opportunity? And I think that would be, quite an interesting conversation, because like I say, he is a very interesting guy, even though he's a sort of classic politician. I think if you can get him talking about stuff that he's really passionate about, I think that could be quite an interesting interview. So Rishi, if you're watching, DM me and we'll sort it out.
Slide into my DMs. So yeah, for that one, Ben, same question. Who would you have?
So I would think who's the one person that every month or two, everyone in the world tunes in to hear what he has to say?
So who?
Jerome Powell.
Oh, that is a
Yeah.
great one. Yeah, that is
I
a
mean,
good one.
can you
Yeah.
imagine, like, why don't I ask Powell when he's buying altcoins? No, but I think to have him on, it would be great because I mean, everyone, like, that's what everyone cares. I mean, everyone cares what he has to say. And I think a lot of people want to tell him how to do his job, but the reality is he's probably smart. He's way smarter, I think, than all of us. I mean, you don't get to where he is by not being a bright person. So yeah, I'd like to have Powell on and kind of ask him, because I mean, he's talked a lot about like avoiding the mistakes of the of the past, and it'd be nice to just sort of like dissect his brain a little bit on all of his thoughts about like where the economy is and what's he trying to avoid and that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, I could see that one. That's a pretty good one. I kind of took a look at it and said, the person I would have on, what is their significance in crypto and how would it move the needle? So like, I got to agree here with Diesel Kane. I was thinking about this one. I said, what about Andrew Tate? That'd be pretty good. But, because everybody would tune in. But then I thought to myself, well, what would really truly move the needle? And what I wanted to do was like get somebody who is not a proponent and someone who's kind of not on the fence, but is like really anti-crypto, to talk to them about why they're anti-crypto and kind of move into that direction and go, why are you like this? And what do you not understand about it? So I can, try to bring them forward. And I know people think this is a losing battle. And I know that, but I'm trying to be I'm more of an optimist. I would have Elizabeth Warren on. And I checked her profile, and she does not accept Bitcoin for donations. Not that I would donate to her fund anyhow, but I set it out there, and she had this interview with Chuck Todd, and she was talking about how Bitcoin doesn't make any sense because it's not tangible. You can't really use it for anything as far as artwork. And I just made this nice little graphic for her, and I said, the real question that Chuck Todd should have asked her is, what's money? And then have her answer that. And if we agree that money is a tool for store of value and a medium of exchange, well, Bitcoin does that and does it very well, actually. And you can see, I mean, what $20 would buy in 1980 versus now is not too much in the grocery store. Take a look in 2011, 2030, or 2021. One Bitcoin could buy you not too many groceries. In 2021, in 10 years, could buy you a really nice car. And then kind of go from that. So I know, like, people say, Rob, it's a losing battle, but sometimes you got to take the bull by the horn and say, I want you on the show and talk to me about what the real problem is, and let's get to meet in the middle. Anyhow, gentlemen, Thank you so much for coming on. We'll get to some questions. We went long. I don't know. And I even skipped over a question about Dogecoin on Twitter, but whatever. Congratulations, Dogecoin holders. Don't hate me. It is interesting that you guys got that. So here's a good question. What's Ben and Guy thoughts on proof of work coin versus proof of stake? And they say I largely favor proof of work since they don't generally have as much centralization or downtime. And also, I think the SEC would look at that more favorably. So, Guy, Ben, anybody want to take this one? What do you think about those two?
I favor proof of work.
Obviously, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Guy, anything with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I fall on the side of proof of work. My only real concern about proof of work, and don't worry, I'm not going to say environmental impact or anything silly. My only concern about proof of work, especially when it comes to things like Bitcoin, is just the inaccessibility of a lot of the hardware. I love this idea that anyone could run, could be a miner. And that I think is one of the, whenever I think back to the early days of Bitcoin, whenever I read about them or research them or whatever, I always come back to that. I always just think how amazing it is, this idea of everyone, you've got your computer tower under your desk, just whirring away, just doing this thing. And, look, Bitcoin has grown more than anyone could imagine. I can't imagine Satoshi ever thought that we'd have this kind of situation where mining is done in these enormous kind of mining farms. But that's where we are, and I would just love to. I do think proof of work is amazing, and I would just love it for. I mean, let's face it, there are proof of work coins that you don't need millions of dollars worth of equipment to mine. Monero, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love it if it was kind of more accessible to all, because I think that's going to be something that's really relevant over the coming years. How does Bitcoin maintain this decentralization, especially once it becomes the world's reserve currency? So
that's right. Once it becomes the world reserve currency, see if that happens out. Here's another one, and it's one I was concerned with. If the market crashes, won't Tether crash as well and bring down Bitcoin? I got to tell you, for the coins that I've been harping on, Tether being one of them, it sure has stood the test of time. Which stable coins have been depegged so far? Not Tether, USDC and Luna and some others. So, gentlemen, what do you think about this one? Will Tether crash as everything else crashes, or will it just continue to roll along like it always has?
Well, yeah, you FUD Tether and you end up looking pretty silly, don't you? So I'm not going to go down that route. But yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to okay, market crashes. If people want to try and redeem their USDT, I guess if you have I guess anything is vulnerable to a crisis of confidence in the end. But yeah, I think if USDT holders kind of held on, then yeah, I think it would be fine. It's withstood everything up to now, as you say.
Yeah, Ben, same thing, or do you think it's going to hit something hard times?
I mean, they're kind of like there's sort of like these mutually exclusive ideas, right? I mean, like Bitcoin has crashed many, many times, and Tether hasn't. So like just because Bitcoin or crypto crashes doesn't mean that Tether has to. I mean, it doesn't mean that Tether can't, but I mean, I think the crypto influencer, crypto Twitter, whatever, people have been sort of talking about the demise of Tether forever, and it's still here. I mean, I don't have any money in stable coins, but I'm not currently betting that it's imminently about to go down or anything.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I've been talking about it a while. Also, I've been talking about Dogecoin for quite some time, but I believe if you look at that historical charts on CoinMarketCap, you will see Dogecoin has been in the top 20 forever, just about. So yeah, I dish on it to my peril. And then lastly, guys, we're here at an hour, so everybody, thanks for showing up. We appreciate it. Last one, this question will go to Guy. Is NFA Live going to be in London during the show for the conference?
I think we've got to do it. I mean, it's on a Saturday, which is a little bit out of the ordinary, but I don't think it would break the internet to have NFA Live on a different day, would it? I think that's what the world needs to see. So yeah, we'll make that happen. If you're going to be there, Rob, and Ben, if you can join us via video link, yeah, I think the fans will go wild for that.
Ben, what do you think? NFA Live, get the kids off to soccer practice early. Come on the show.
Up over to London for the afternoon.
I thought it'd be great. We could like me and Guy could be there, and we could have a big jumbotron, and then Ben could come in underneath there, and then we just start talking shop.
And we can just wind Ben up about altcoins.
Yeah. It'll be even worse if the altcoin market outperforms Bitcoin between now and then.
If altcoins are pumping on the 10th of June, I tell you, it's going to be great. We're gonna have a field day.
Okay, so if dominance goes up, we'll do NFA Live show. If Bitcoin dominance goes down, not going to happen. And then I will just remind everybody that first of all, thanks everybody for coming on. I appreciate it. But take a look over at Into the Cryptoverse, and then sale going on, I think 10% off for first month. And then Guy, where can they find those tickets for if they want to come in? I think you guys sold out, didn't you?
I don't think we've quite sold out, but they are selling pretty quick. So, but I think there are a few left. Macy tells me there are still one or two. So, live.coinbureau.com is the place to go.
All right, guys. So let's get out of here. My green screen is very cold. I need to get out and warm up. So thank you, gentlemen, for stopping by. We appreciate it. Everybody like and subscribe to their channels, and we'll see you guys in the next week. I think we're on Guys?
Yep. Here on Clips.
All right.
So
everybody,
I will have some spicy altcoin related questions for Ben.
Perfect. And then, of course, the market will crash for all. We'll see. Everybody, thanks so much. See you guys on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.